The year was 1914. There was a small island with no city, no people, only a lighthouse, and a mystery hidden deep in the sea. In the beginning, a ship is seen sailing across the South Atlantic Ocean toward its destination. On that ship was a weather scientist named David. They were heading to an island located in one of the deepest parts of the Atlantic Ocean. The government sent David there to study and record the strange weather changes. He had to stay there for about a year to collect data and understand the unusual weather patterns. After that, he would return home. The ship's captain, Alex, was taking David to the island. They brought food and supplies enough for 1 year. After a long journey, they finally reached the island. Using a small boat, they went ashore and carried their needed items. There was a lighthouse and a small house where David would live. Before him, another weather officer had stayed there, but his duty was now over. From that day, David became the new weather observer, and the old officer, Robert, was supposed to return with Captain Alex's ship. But when they entered the house, everyone was shocked. There was no sign of any person. Everything inside was scattered and messy. Thinking the man might be inside the lighthouse, Captain and David quickly went there. What they saw was strange. The whole lighthouse was surrounded by sharp wooden spikes, like someone had locked it from the outside so no one could enter. Captain and David knocked many times, but no one answered. Finally, they forced the door open and went inside. At the very top, they found a man lying down. His name was Gruner. When they asked him about the old officer, he calmly said there was a deadly disease. When Captain asked about the body, Gruner gave an even stranger answer. Maybe someone killed him. Hearing that, David and the captain were both shocked. They thought maybe Gruner had lost his mind. But without knowing the truth about the missing officer, they couldn't do anything. Captain told David he could return with them if he wanted, but David refused. He knew if he could send the correct weather report to the government, he would earn good money. So he decided to stay. Captain gave David a gun for self-defense, warning that the island might not be as safe as it looked. After the ship left, David started fixing the house to make it livable. While cleaning, he found a diary in one of the drawers. The diary had many notes about the island, but some lines were not clear. David read every page and found strange drawings and a photo of the old man's wife. He grew tired and fell asleep. Next morning at the shore, he saw stones placed in odd shapes and shells set in a pattern. He thought maybe someone made them for a ritual. He went back to his weather work. That night, someone knocked. David called Gruner, but no answer. With a lamp, he heard a strange sound and saw a hand slide under the door. The hand was not human. David ran to his basement and hid. The creature came in and looked for him. Its fearful eye peered through a crack. David grabbed a knife, and when the eye came close, he stabbed hard. The creature screamed and ran away, but it might come back. David closed the basement door and tied it tight. He stayed awake all night. Next morning, he found marks in the sand. The prints were not like a human's, and they led to the sea. Now David understood why Gruner had nailed spikes around the lighthouse. The house was not safe. He asked Gruner to open the door, but Gruner said David should go back to the ship. David felt sad, but he stayed. He boarded the windows, built a sharp wooden fence, and spread old paper and oil by the door to burn if the creature comes again. David didn't know one truth, but he was about to find it out that night. Inside the house, he found an old box. Inside the box was a gun and many bullets. Seeing that gave him a little courage, but the fear was still there. As night came, darkness covered everything. David sat quietly in one corner of the house with the gun in his hand. His breathing became fast. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound. When he moved toward the window, it felt like the ground under his feet was gone. He saw not one, but many strange creatures coming out of the water, all moving toward his house. Soon, they started breaking the door. David began shooting right away. Some creatures fell, but the others became more violent and tried harder to get inside. As their number grew, David quickly set fire to the papers and books near the door. The fire scared the creatures and they ran back into the sea. But now the fire spread inside the wooden house.
David wrapped himself in a blanket, broke the gate, and ran out to save himself. He hid behind a big rock near the lighthouse. His right hand was badly burned. Luckily, it started raining, and slowly the fire went out. But the next morning, David saw that his house was gone, burned to ashes. Now, if he wanted to survive, he had to take shelter in the lighthouse. He picked up his rifle and hid between the rocks near the lighthouse. His plan was to use the gun to make Gruner let him inside. But suddenly, Gruner pointed his gun at David. At that exact moment, a strange creature beside Gruner jumped toward David and attacked him. That creature was actually Gruner's protector. Gruner quickly stopped David and said, "She is my pet." David didn't shoot, but made one condition. "If you want to stay alive, let me live in the lighthouse." He had enough gunpowder for 1 year and enough food for both of them to survive. Gruner stayed silent for a while, then slowly agreed. Before evening, they took the remaining food and returned to the lighthouse. lighthouse. The next morning, that creature quietly licked David's wounded hand while he was sleeping. Within a short time, his hand started to heal. David was shocked by what he saw because it was hard to believe. From the top of the lighthouse, David saw Gruner counting the bullets he got from David's gun, while the creature helped him in her own way. That meant the creature wasn't violent. Now, David wanted to learn more about her from Gruner and share this story with the world because it was nothing less than a miracle.
A strange female creature had come out of the dark sea and stood before them. If this creature was shown to the world, both David and Gruner would become famous. But Gruner didn't want that. He didn't want to leave the island. He believed no one can truly live free in society. Everyone is a servant to someone. That's why the island was perfect for him. He saw himself as a king there, the master of his own will. That's why he wrote, "Gruner is king," all over the island. But how did that strange female creature become his pet? Once, Gruner had saved her life. One day, she got caught in his fishing net when she was still small. From that day, she stayed with Gruner and began to obey him. But Gruner was an angry man. He never treated her kindly. He often forced her into physical relations. One day, that creature finally attacked Gruner. In revenge, Gruner punished her. A punishment so cruel that the creature started to see herself as his servant. Maybe that's why, every night, more of her kind came out of the sea to take her back. But they could not attack in daylight. Now David didn't want to stay alone anymore. He wanted to send a signal to any passing ship and leave the island. But it wasn't easy. Gruner said no ship ever came near this island. David didn't believe him. He hated this place and was desperate to leave as soon as possible. As night began to fall, Gruner told him to get ready with his gun because the creatures could attack at any moment. They prepared to turn on the lighthouse light, and soon a large number of sea creatures came out of the water and moved toward them. Gruner kept firing non-stop, but David was terrified. He ran back inside the lighthouse and hid in a corner. Even after Gruner shouted at him, David didn't move. After a while, he fainted. Gruner fought all night alone. Before morning, the tired Gruner woke David up and said, "If you want to stay in the lighthouse, you must follow my orders." He had to bring water, do all the cleaning, and stay on guard duty every night. David agreed because he had no other choice. But there was one thing he hated. Gruner abused the female creature every day in cruel ways. David thought maybe Gruner had lost his mind after living alone on the island for so many years. Still, he had to listen to him. At night, they got ready for another attack. The creatures came again from the sea. But this time, David wasn't scared. He fired his gun. Gruner did nothing. He locked the lighthouse door, leaving David outside. He sat quietly inside, wanting David to learn how to fight the creatures on his own. If not, he would die fighting. David screamed for help, but Gruner didn't respond. After fighting all night, morning came. Gruner saw David sitting at the lighthouse door covered in blood. He had learned how to fight the creatures. The fear inside him was gone. Time passed this way, fighting the creatures at night and working in the lighthouse during the day. The island now felt like a prison to him. He always thought about when he would leave, when he would be free. Over time, David and the female creature formed a strange friendship. He started to feel sorry for her. Being alone and away from your own kind is painful. Maybe the creature felt the same way. David gave her a name, Anaris.
One day, they noticed that the attacks were getting weaker. David thought maybe the creatures moved somewhere else during winter, like whales. Or maybe they realized attacking was useless. But Gruner said no, they would come again. They were growing in number. A few more days passed. One night after dinner, Gruner and David started playing checkers to pass the time. But Gruner made a big mistake. They got so lost in the game that they forgot to turn on the lighthouse light. The creatures used the darkness to attack. David saw that the creatures were now breeding. Their numbers had grown so much that fighting them was almost impossible. Their bullets were nearly gone. Somehow they reached the top of the lighthouse, but Gruner was badly hurt in the leg. The creatures were trying to break in. There was no way out. Luckily, the sun rose. As soon as the sunlight hit, the creatures went back to the sea. Honoris tried to heal Gruner's wound, but David now understood. They couldn't win this fight. Their bullets were almost gone, and food was running out. The next day, while walking outside the lighthouse, David saw a ship in the distance. He quickly ran inside, grabbed the flare gun, and sent a signal toward the ship, but Gruner stopped him. He didn't want David to leave the island. Then Honoris suddenly attacked Gruner. She wanted to save David from him. Gruner didn't want anyone to leave. The island was his world. He was the king, and Honoris was his servant. He didn't want to return to the city or let David go. After all this time, he finally had someone to talk to, and he couldn't let that go. Slowly, the ship disappeared into the sea right before David's eyes. There was nothing he could do now. Days passed like this. Gruner still treated both David and Honoris badly, but he was especially cruel to Anaris. David didn't like that at all. One day, David gave Anaris a small toy boat as a gift. He made it from whale bones, hoping it would make her feel a little better. But when Anaris saw the toy, she took David to a hidden spot on the island. There was a real boat there. When David asked Gruner about it, Gruner said yes. He already knew about the boat. Months ago, a weapons smuggler's ship carrying lots of guns and ammo sank near the island during a storm. Some men survived and reached the island by boat, but before morning, all of them were killed by the sea creatures. Hearing this, David came up with a plan. They had something like a diving suit. If someone wore it and went underwater, they might find bullets or dynamite which could help them fight the monsters. But Gruner refused right away. He didn't even want to go near the sea. Still, David was ready to risk his life. More days passed, and David's bond with Anaris grew stronger. He started to care about her deeply. Gruner secretly saw this, and for the first time, he thought maybe he should help David. But his real plan was different. He wanted David to dive underwater, find the dynamite, and then leave him there to die, so the creatures would kill him. That way, all the dynamite would be his, and Anaris would be his servant again. So they both went to the spot. David put on the diving suit and went deep into the sea. He saw the shipwreck destroyed, but luckily he found a few boxes of dynamite. Just then, the creatures appeared in front of him. David got scared and fell. The iron diving suit was so heavy that he could not move at all. He could not send any signal to Gruner. Gruner thought maybe all the creatures had killed David, but underwater, there were only 2 small baby creatures. David pushed himself underwater, left the diving suit there, and swam back to the surface. There, they found some old boxes with dynamite. They placed the dynamite around the lighthouse in 2 layers, so that in the next attack, they could destroy all the monsters. Months passed. Snow began to fall, and the creatures disappeared again. The attack stopped. Now their main task was to keep the lighthouse running and watch carefully. Gruner lost his patience. Maybe Anaris had told the creatures about the dynamite plan. That's why they stopped attacking. Angry, Gruner started hitting Anaris, but stopped David from interfering. Finally, David and Gruner made a new plan. They would keep the main lighthouse door open so that if the creatures came inside, they could trigger the dynamite. Soon the creatures emerged from the sea and went straight for the main door. They attacked David inside. David bravely fought the monsters. When the creatures reached the lighthouse, Gruner tried to trigger the first dynamite, but it did not explode. David had disconnected it earlier and forgot to reconnect it. David ran upstairs and connected the dynamite wires. By then, the creatures had started climbing the lighthouse. Gruner tried to stop them alone. Once the connection was ready, David triggered the first explosion. Many creatures died, but more monsters were still attacking. Gruner triggered the second explosion. The powerful blast knocked both of them unconscious. The next morning when they woke up, Anaris was gone. Dead creatures were scattered everywhere, and some were injured. Gruner killed the injured one by one. Then, David noticed a necklace hanging on the neck of a dead creature. In that moment, he realized they had made the biggest mistake. The creatures were not violent. They were civilized like humans. They just couldn't speak like humans. Maybe they were attacking the lighthouse for a reason.
But to Gruner, it didn't matter. The island was his kingdom, and everyone had to obey him. After that, the creatures never attacked like before. Yet every day, sounds came from the sea. David realized how much damage they had done, how many families were broken, how many children lost their loved ones. Because of just one misunderstanding, the next day, David saw some small baby creatures wandering around. They had lost their families. David made a circle with stones and placed the small toy boat in the middle, hoping Anarius would return. But no matter how long he waited, Anarius never came back. One morning, David saw Gruner unconscious. Around him, old items were scattered, including an old photo. When David saw the photo, he was shocked. The girl in the picture, the same one from Gruner's diary on the first day, was actually Gruner's wife. Gruner himself was once the weather officer at this lighthouse. About a year ago, he came to this island. His real name was Robert, but he changed it because he never wanted to leave the island. Seeing all this, David lost hope. He thought he would never leave the island. The next afternoon, David went to the shore and saw that the small toy boat in the circle was gone. But in the same place, he saw a small creature holding the boat. David dropped his torch in the middle of the circle to show he had no desire to fight. He wanted no one to be hurt and only wanted friendship. Soon, Anarius came out of the waves, followed by the whole group of creatures. This time, no one attacked David. They only wanted peace and a safe place for their children, like all creatures do. The creatures had attacked at night before, because the humans on the island had made them uneasy. But how could Gruner understand this? He still thought he was the king of the island. Gruner came out of the lighthouse with his gun, trying to tell tell David that the creatures did not want to fight. They wanted peace. But Gruner did not listen. He shouted at Anarius to go inside. For the first time, Anarius did not obey. She was no longer a servant. Now she was just a mother, standing for her children. Gruner felt weak from inside and moved toward the lighthouse. David thought maybe now Gruner would understand that every creature wants freedom and no one wants to be a slave. But Gruner was not wise. At the lighthouse, he threw a flare from above, which hit a small creature directly. The baby creature died immediately. Everyone panicked and ran, and Anarius lost all trust in David. Mad with anger, David ran toward the lighthouse and collided with Gruner. A fight started. He shouted, "Why did you do this? They only wanted peace." But Gruner had become so furious that he decided to kill David. He raised his axe and moved to attack, but at that moment, he heard David call him by his real name, Robert. Hearing his real name, Gruner stopped completely. Robert had never really been like this. After coming to the island, loneliness, his wife's death, and deep depression had broken his mind. He was not really a killer. He was a good man. The creatures never wanted to fight. They only wanted peace. Gruner had killed them to show his own strength. Now Gruner realized his mistake. He surrendered in front of the creatures, and in a few moments, they killed him. David locked himself inside the lighthouse to stay safe. Time passed. 1 year later, a government officer came to the island with a new weather observer. They were going to take David away. But the officer thought David was actually Gruner. David did not correct them. He quietly stood on the balcony and said nothing, because now he did not want to leave the island, just like Gruner. Meanwhile, Anarius lived happily with her family. They no longer feared Gruner and could live freely on the island and in the sea. And this is how the story ends.